Good afternoon. I'm Bill Slovin, Chief Technology Officer with Brandon Systems, and we help organizations with their data strategies and being able to support all the modern challenges around data and how to get their data prepared and ready for AI. Healthcare is moving towards real-time intelligence, and it's important to have a secure and resilient data platform. So I've got with me here today Russell Esposito. He's the Senior IT Advisor for RCE Services, and he's also an Associate Professor for the State University of New York and Hofstra University, where he teaches information technology courses for undergraduate and MBA programs. And we're going to talk a little more about data within healthcare and the need for having a resilient architecture and some of the challenges around security as well. So, Russ, looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest shift in how healthcare organizations will use real-time data and AI to support clinical and operational decisions?
Well, thanks, Bill. Thanks for the intro, too. There's a lot going on, for all the constituents of the industry. Payer, providers, vendors, there's so much happening. Just to give you some of the examples, there's a new company called Open Evidence. And Open Evidence is curating all of the research data. So it's looking at JAMA, the Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, because no physician can keep up with that. It pulls that all together, so it's a decision support system for physicians. They actually have now about 40% of all the physicians in the United States that are registered for this, that have an account with the system. And no human can keep up with it. So it's all about the data. It's all about culling it, creating data. I also think that a system like that, that's a decision support system, there are people that are predicting, whether it's this system or some other system, that you will have physician avatars. So if you can't get your physician on the weekend or at night, you have a physician avatar that could take the place of the physician with all the legal caveats. But the key thing is you can't use a standard LLM, a medical LLM. You have to incorporate that with your own data. So you have to be able to control your own data. You don't want the avatar saying one thing and the physician, the human, saying something else. So you have to get your data vectorized and put into a vector database so that you have, RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, so that the response is appropriate to your organization, to what your policies, procedures, and care plans are. So controlling your own data, understanding it, culling it, ensuring that you've defined it and curated it properly is the only way you'll survive.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And in terms of real-time data, it's also really important that organizations are thinking ahead in how they're going to be able to get that data into their warehouse environments in a more near real-time or even real-time fashion. In the past, it's always generally been batch-oriented, and now the industry is moving towards real-time data, towards being able to make decisions rapidly, quickly, and having those dashboards available to them immediately, so they can see those metrics right away. So organizations want AI, but many don't have the data foundation yet to support it. From your experience, what are the most common barriers that keep healthcare systems from becoming AI ready?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. There's a plethora of data, particularly in insurance companies and medical centers, because you have clinical information, you have medical information. In medical centers, you have instrumentation from radiology and lab. There's just so third-party vendors. There's just so much information that's got to be managed, and it's difficult. So you need a platform. You need some way to be able to pull that all together. It's funny because years ago you would talk to organizations about master data management, and they would kind of yawn. Well, we know our financial data, and we've got our, if it's a hospital, we know our patient acuity, and insurers say they've got their actuarial sciences. And you say, well, what do you do with new employees? Do you even have like a master data management database, a data dictionary? And they go, no, well, we onboard people. They know, we show them who to talk to. So it's tribal information. AI is not going to work with tribal information.
Right.
So the data has to be put together properly. And in fact, we talked about RAG before, the retrieval augmented generation. It makes me think of fabric because the two words RAG and fabric are so related. So as you know, and you know better than I do because you have a product, Fabric Express, which helps people implement Fabric, the Microsoft platform. But that does everything. Rather than have 4 or 5 vendors, Fabric gives you the ability to have pipelines, to do the ETL, to have your Parquet data in a normal format, whether it's structured data or unstructured data, to be able to have the BI tools all in one platform from Microsoft. Now, every organization's got to make their own decision about what platform to use. But I think since so many companies use Office, and that's a natural extension to BI, Power BI, and Power BI is a very, very popular tool because of the connections with Excel. The next logical extension, I think, for a lot of organizations is Fabric. And again, every organization's got to make their own decisions about what makes sense for them. But I think Fabric or RAG, retrieval augmented generation, I think it's kind of a natural connection, a natural association.
Right, and as you said, there are a lot of choices out there, and the main thing is that healthcare organizations are looking to a platform that they can use that can cover the entire spectrum of data warehousing, from ingestion all the way through to analytics, BI, and AI as well. And some of the challenges that we've seen with a lot of our clients is around the data fragmentation. It's not even necessarily the platform per se, but it's getting the data prepared and ready to be able to utilize AI tools on top of it. Because just having the tool isn't enough. It's having clean data with proper semantic models that define the data in a way that the AI can consume it. So on the topic of governance, because governance is a big buzzword these days, and it often gets overlooked, yet it's really the backbone around trustworthy analytics. What governance practices will healthcare organizations need to implement to safely scale AI?
Yeah. So governance is another good point, because so many companies I've worked with in the past, governance is about regulatory compliance. You have a compliance officer, you have general counsel there, and they kind of dictate what governance is all about. And IT, not to say that they don't look at it all, but if you have a good CIO that's sort of interacting with the business well, they kind of let IT do its own thing. But governance has to be bigger than that. It's got to be bigger than compliance. Because now with AI, you really have to look at what are the opportunities. Where can you put AI? How can you use agents? Where does it make sense? Where does it not make sense? And there are products now. I've been a long believer of Six Sigma process to understand your processes and to improve them. But there are automated tools now like process mining from IBM, from UiPath, Pega. A lot of companies have it. And that was a way to automate sort of what you would do manually with a Six Sigma process. But now you could take process mining, document your process, find out where there were breaks in it, where there's failures, where there were delays, and document it for agentic applications. But again, you've got to have governance over it to make sure that you're doing this sort of in a systematic way, and you're doing it where you don't want to fix things that aren't broken. You want to get the best ROI for your product. And now that's sort of top-down governance. But now if you look at OpenClaw, you will have bottom-up governance, because you're going to have people show up at work and they're going to put a Mac Mini on their desk and they're going to create agents. And unless you have some policies and procedures about the bottom-up processes, you don't know if there's duplication of effort, if you could leverage things that people have done in one department versus another department. So you really have to have governance over a top-down strategy and a bottom-up from these people who are aficionados and know what to do with OpenClaw and know how to use that, but you don't want redundancy and you want to leverage things that make sense. So your point about governance, it's got to have a completely different color to it today, different strategy. It can't be just about, compliance, regulatory compliance.
Right, exactly. Good point. And how many of you out there are dealing with governance-related issues today or thinking about implementing governance, just with a show of hands? Because I hear it all the time that we need a governance strategy, and it can be daunting just to decide on the tool set and get the business together in a way that you can successfully implement it. Because one of the difficulties in the strategy is making those hard decisions about what something means, or what a particular domain entity is and how it's going to be utilized throughout the organization. And again, it comes back to, if you have a solid foundation, a solid tool set to work from, a solid environment, you can then utilize those tools to further establish your governance strategy. So moving on a little bit, as AI adoption grows, security and resilience become even more critical. How do you see the cybersecurity landscape evolving for healthcare over the next 3 to 5 years? And I know, Russ, cybersecurity is one of your areas of expertise.
Thanks, Bill. Well, Department of Homeland Security and CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, they've looked at healthcare industry and they see the attacks in both directions, ransomware as well as breaches of data. And it's very, very common, becoming more common and more sophisticated. So with AI, the entire kill chain, the whole kill chain approach from cybersecurity, surveying your potential victim, finding the vulnerability, developing a tool, deploying the tool, once the tool's in place, executing it, that whole kill chain is becoming more sophisticated because of AI. And because of AI, tools now are coming out, malevolent tools, agents, cybersecurity bad guys, more or less, hackers are deploying agents. So you could be at a conference like you are right now, and you think you're safe because you didn't click on an email with a bad link, but your agent has been compromised, and your agent now is providing data to a hacker, and you're not even aware of it. So those tools are becoming more and more complex, so they can deploy their own tools, the hackers, or they can essentially control your tool. So that now of course the managed security service providers are also using AI, but it's sort of a cat and mouse game of who's going to win this. So it's going to always escalate. So it's becoming more and more important to have a good risk assessment of your organization, and to also have the probably a managed security services provider come in, give you a risk assessment, understand what your posture looks like, your security posture, and partner with someone that can do detection and response. A managed security service provider is IBM, there's SecureWorks, there's lots of them, and they can help you in the event that something happens, quickly get involved in detecting a problem and responding. So to your point, it's healthcare gets attacked from every direction, ransomware as well as data breaches, escalation, more complexity, and the urgency of partnering with a professional organization, I think, is becoming almost essential.
Right, exactly. And it also does come back to governance a little bit too, because building a governance strategy around agentics and how you're going to utilize agents within the organization is critical, because the power is endless with what you can do with agentics, and organizations are looking to implement it as quickly as possible to gain the advantages, but you really do have to be careful about the oversight, security concerns around agents, especially when it comes to accessing your data and being able to process transactions within the environment. So if you could give one piece of advice to healthcare CIOs preparing for the next wave of AI and data transformation, what should they prioritize now to be ready for 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think an AI program that probably is not permanent, but if you could get an AI program to first look at governance and get governance to be more involved in IT and AI and the agentic processes, so that governance can replace ultimately what this AI program would be about. But governance has to really look at data. Without data, you don't have anything. It's the food for AI, obviously. So you have to have a good platform. You have to be able to know where your data is, understand it, correlate it, know how to vectorize it and put it into a vector database, so you could complement an LLM that's out there. So you can't really use standard LLMs the way we do today just to get information. If you're an organization, you have to complement it with RAG. Fabric seems like a good solution. You should look at all the solutions. But I think if you're a Microsoft shop, or if you're using Office, using Power BI, you should at least look at Fabric and Fabric Express and see if it makes sense for your organization. So I think a program that is sort of AI focused, that looks at governance, data, and also cybersecurity, I think that's really an approach I would take.
Really great points. And just on the side of Microsoft Fabric, if you're not familiar, it's an end-to-end data warehousing solution that allows you to build your entire life cycle and build your entire warehouse from all the way from ingestion all the way through to dashboarding, analytics, and AI sits on top of it through Microsoft Copilot and allows you to talk to your data, ask questions of your data, and integrate it with the entire Office suite. So for organizations that are heavily leveraged into Microsoft, it's a great choice, and we've aligned ourselves to that product, and be happy to talk more about it. We're over at booth 843, just around the corner over here, if you want to discuss a little more about how you can utilize some of those tools. And any questions at all?
How many of you are providers and how many are payers? Let's just see a show of hands of providers. Okay, a few. And payers? More providers, okay. Consulting companies? Or products? Okay, interesting. Well, one of the other things I wanted to mention is robotics, because we talked a lot about software, but I guess everyone's aware that Elon Musk and others are building factories to prepare us for robotics. And I always think of hospitals. I was a CIO for Stony Brook years ago in a medical center on Long Island, and there's so much labor. There's so incredible amount of labor. Delivering 3 meals a day to every patient, picking up the trays, delivering meds, moving equipment around, moving patients around. And the people who do that, they may find that job to be not very rewarding. But if you have a robot that does it, The robot could be multilingual. The robot could do things with children, could have activities. And those people could find jobs. Somebody's got to maintain these robots. They have to be sanitized. There's going to be repairs. There's going to be needs to take care of the charging stations. And in addition to sanitizing, there might be, we're in a city right now where there is some graffiti. Some kid is going to grab a Sharpie and write on the back of a robot, "Kick me." It's going to happen. So they're going to remove, I'm sure they're going to remove things. They're going to remove graffiti, sanitize. And also there could be employees or patients that put button cameras or microphones spying on other patients. We can't even imagine the new jobs that'll come out of this. But security, privacy, sanitation, graffiti probably as well. For the folks who are providers, I think you're going to see that robots are going to be a big part of your future when these things do become, mainstream.
Absolutely.
Just the other side of the software. I want to talk about hardware a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. If there are no questions, anyone? Great. Well, thank you very much.